We were kind of thugged out little gangsters and stuff like that. That's pretty much how people were. This is probably right around 96, 13 years old, somewhere in there, 14 years old. But you know, it got to a point where me and Josh started hanging out a lot together. And he would come over to my house on the weekends, and we were real heavily into smoking a lot of weed. So we would smoke a lot of weed, you know. He would bring over weed, I'd bring over weed to his house. We'd take turns. He'd spend the night at my house one weekend, next weekend go to his, smoke a lot of weed and stuff like that. And you know, my mom, she knew I smoked weed, but she didn't really make it that big of a deal, you know. And she wasn't around that much anyways, so it's just like, well, whatever, you know. It's kind of different, but that is what it is. So you know, we started hanging around a lot, you know, and stuff like that. And we would even ride the bus sometimes. He'd ride my bus, and we'd go to my house after work or after school, and we'd be talking to other little girls on the bus too, around our same age, 14 years old, and you know, trying to throw our Mac down on them and stuff like that. And our goal was to get them back to my house, and we would try to set it up, you know, get a bottle of alcohol and say, hey, come over and we'll drink some alcohol and smoke some weed and, you know, listen to music and hang out. But our real intention was, you know, to try to do all that stuff so we could get in bed with them, have sex with them or whatever, you know. I lost my virginity when I was 13 years old. So that was our goal. That was me and Josh's goal. And we would do this with a lot of girls our age, you know. Stupid stuff when you're young kids. And so we would do this stuff all the time. We'd do a lot of dumb stuff like that. We get into a lot of fights with people in school, you know, manipulate girls our age, you know. We were like little thugs or whatever, you know, get into a lot of trouble, causing a lot of hate and discontent. But so I remember one time I brought like a sack of weed to school, because I planned on taking that weed over to Josh's house after school, you know, and getting high. And so I'd done this a few times, you know. This one time I had a sack of weed and I put it right inside of my sock underneath my foot. And I just walked on the weed all day, but that's the only place I thought I could hide it at, you know, and in case I got searched or someone snitched me out or something like that. Well, we had PE class, and me and Josh had the same PE class, or another guy, and I was telling him that I had some weed on me. And some kid that didn't like me overheard. And he went and told the principal about it, and they told the cops, and we usually had a cop around school, you know. And so I got called down to the principal's office, and they said, yeah, we heard you have some weed on you, we want to search you. And I was like, alright, go ahead and search me. Do what you gotta do, you know. And I thought I was cool because I had it hidden in a good spot. So he had me empty out my pockets, checked all my pockets, checked my whole body, had me kick off my shoes. He checked my shoes. He says, alright, go ahead and put your shoes back on. And so I started putting my shoes back on, and the officer says, hold on a minute. And he says, let me see this. And he put his hand right on the bottom of my foot, you know, where I had that sack of weed. And he felt that sack of weed. And he's all, good try, buddy. And he pulls out the sack of weed, you know. And I was like, oh, man, I'm caught, you know. So they called my mom. I got out of school suspension for like 3 or 5 days. First time getting caught with weed at school, you know. I was like, this sucks, you know. So they sent me home. So they sent me home, and they sent me home early, too. They sent me home like right around 11 or noon, you know, because I got busted with weed at school. And so they sent me home, and I'm all bummed out or whatever, and I'm just hanging around the house. And my mom went back to work, and it's just, at this time she started dating this dude named Calvin. He was from Texas. She started dating him when I was 13 years old, so he was already around the house about a year. So he was around the house, and it's just me and Calvin hanging out, you know, and I felt so stupid. I felt, for getting caught with weed at school, you know, I felt like, what the hell, man? So I'm just sitting there at home, and an hour goes by, and then a group of people walk in front of my house, and it's just like a whole bunch of girls and like maybe a couple guys, all around my age. But I've never seen them anywhere before. I know they're not from my school I go to. Maybe they're from a different junior high. So I'm just gawking, looking out the window at all of them walk by my house. There's like 20 of them, you know, a bunch of them. And I'm like, who the hell are these people? I don't know any of them. And I was like, well, whatever, you know. And so an hour or so goes by, and then I get a phone call from one of my buddies. I think it was Eddie that might have called me. It's maybe Eddie or Curtis, I don't remember. But they called me up and they says, hey bro, you want to go to a party tonight? And I says, a party? Where at? And they says, man, it's right down the street from your house. I was like, what? I was like, yeah, let's go to a party. So we end up showing up to this party, and we're only like 14 years old. And at this party, it's all the people that was walking in front of my house. All those girls and the couple guys that were walking in front of my house earlier. So it's like, man, I just seen these people walking by my house earlier. So we start partying with them and everything, and one thing leads to another. We're drinking, doing shots, you know. I don't think they had any weed or whatever, but they had a lot of alcohol, and they were all young too, 14 years old. Next thing you know, the party gets busted. And what happens? The cops roll in. And some of the people ran, and I wasn't able to run. There was way too many. Like, cops were at the front door and the back door. And I think my friend Eddie, he got away or whatever, I think. I don't really remember, but so they pulled us all to the side and gave us all breathalyzers. You guys have alcohol around here. You guys are way too young. We're going to breathalyze each and every one of you guys. And if you guys have alcohol in your system, you know, you guys are getting a ticket. We're calling your parents, whatever. So, so they breathalyzed me, and I had alcohol in my system, and they wrote me a ticket. They called Calvin, my mom's boyfriend, and he come to pick me up just a couple blocks away. Well, this time I feel really stupid. Because earlier in the day I got busted for marijuana. For possession of marijuana at school. And now later on in the evening I get busted for drinking underage. 2 tickets in one day. Who in the hell gets that? Me, this guy. I get that. And so I felt real stupid, you know. So they put me on probation for a year, and you know, and I did good on probation. You know, I think I got in a couple fights here and there, but I never got caught or never got turned in. Or if my probation officer said something. I think there was one fight I got into where my probation was extended like another 3 months or something. But you know, I was a pretty wild kid. You know, I was fighting, drinking, having sex, doing drugs. Whatever, you know, I didn't care. I didn't really have too much respect for a lot of people. And I think I was that way because hanging around with my brother and his friends, and also, you know, the name I had to withhold, you know. So it was really interesting. So I went on probation, so a year and 3 months, and then I got off probation. And, you know, just went on about life and stuff like that. And even while I was on probation, I still smoked weed because my probation officer never gave me no drug test. So I was still smoking weed, you know, and that's stupid, you know, but I was still doing it. So I was still smoking weed even while on probation. I just had to go visit them once a week or whatever, make sure I wasn't getting into too much trouble. So everything was cool, whatever. So I got off probation and everything like that. Well, the following summer, you know, from going to 8th grade to 9th grade, me and Josh Pandillo, we were working for my uncle Talleray. He had a roof job. Well, at this one house we done like the concrete work all in the back, and then he also got the roof job too. He would try to get as much work as he could. So we're doing a roof job, me and Josh Pandillo. And you know, my uncle paid me good when he got paid or whatever, but there were some times where there was long periods between checks. So he would just give us a couple joints or whatever he could give us, you know. And around this time, you know, he was cool with me smoking because this is like a year and a half later. you know, compared to when I was working for him and selling the bubble gum. And so me and Josh were up on this roof, you know, and just pounding nails and stuff like that, working all day. And like this one day we only got paid like one joint to work all day. But he's like, well, whatever, you know, what else are we going to be doing with our time? You know, go to the park, ride our bikes, go play basketball, whatever. At least we got a joint for working all day. But my mom come by the job site and she told me, she says, all the money that you make working for your grandfather and your uncle this summer, you need to save it. Because you need to save it and buy school clothes for next year. She says, I'm behind on bills and I won't be able to buy you school clothes for when you're going in 9th grade. So you need to save all your money and make it count, and don't be spending your money foolishly, because you got to buy school clothes. And if you don't buy new school clothes, you're just going to have to wear whatever you wore last year. And I was like, okay, great, wow, whatever, this is life. So that's what I did. I saved my money, and I think I saved up like $300, but it was enough, you know. It was enough back then to go buy some school clothes. Nowadays, $300 won't get you nowhere. Maybe a pair of shoes and a t-shirt or something, you know, but it was enough to buy some clothes back then. And so we're going into 9th grade now, and things are a little different, and you know, just getting in a lot of fights at school still. I'm still getting a lot of trouble, you know. Even though I was on probation and stuff like that, none of it straightened me up. Even though I got 2 tickets in one day, none of it straightened me up. I was still a hellion. I was still getting in all kinds of trouble. I was flunking classes. I didn't even care about school. Like, I would just show up just to see my homies, see my friends, and talk to some chicks and just see what's going on. But when it come time to doing schoolwork, I would just goof off in class, and I didn't even really care. So they started putting me in classes where it's like detention classes, where you couldn't really talk to nobody and you had to do your work, and even the schoolwork was kind of dumbed down, you know, so you could pass it easily, so you wouldn't get held back. And so that was 9th grade, you know, pretty much just living the same as, you know, 13, 14 years old, 7th and 8th grade, just getting in a lot of trouble. I didn't get busted for any more weed though, just that one time. But I was still getting in a lot of fights. I was fighting a lot of people, you know, getting into a lot of trouble, causing a lot of trouble. I was out of school, suspended a bunch of time, in school suspension, just whatever, you know, and I didn't even really care, you know. It's just like, that's who I was, you know. I had to hold a persona of being a badass kid or whatever, like a thugged out kid. That's the kind of mentality and name I had to withhold for myself. And so going into 10th grade, so I went to Central High School, and that was real close to McCormick. Going in 10th grade, and it was pretty much the same thing, you know. Fighting, you know. It's funny because I was hanging around with this group of people, and it's a totally different group of people, you know, but we'd go out on lunch and go get something to eat for lunch, and on the way back from lunch, we'd fight each other just on purpose, just to get better at fighting. And that's the kind of stupid stuff that we would do, you know. That's what we do, just fight each other just so we get better at fighting. And crazy stuff like that, you know. And even in 10th grade, like, my house was all the way on the other side of town compared to where I went to high school at. So there's a few times I started hanging around with some stoner type dudes, and they said, hey man, let's go burn down. Let's go burn down for lunch, go smoke some doobies, go hit the bong or whatever. So we'd drive all the way to my house on the other side of town just to go smoke some weed. And then come back, and we were hella late coming back to our after lunch class. We were like an hour late, you know, come back or whatever, all stoned or whatever. And that didn't last very long. I was only in high school for maybe like, I don't know, maybe like November. And then I just stopped going to school. And at this time, you know, my uncle was back and forth. He would go, my uncle Talleray, he actually lived in New Mexico, Taos, New Mexico. And he would live up there during the winter time. But in the summertime, he would come back and do jobs or whatever. That was his thing. So I ended up dropping out of school, and I went up to Taos, New Mexico with my uncle, you know, hanging out there. But yeah, I dropped out of 10th grade, you know, dropped out of school and everything, just to go hang out with my uncle and just hang out with him, do whatever he's doing kind of deal, you know. And he was a big time smoker. You know those big popcorn tins that people buy during Christmas time, and they have 3 different types of popcorn in there. I remember I was in New Mexico with my uncle and his girlfriend, and I don't know what I was looking. I was snooping around for something to eat or something, and I seen one of those popcorn tins, and I said, "Oh yeah, he's gonna have some popcorn here." So I pulled it down, and I opened it up, and it's plumb full with weed. Probably like 2 or 3 pounds in there, and I was just like, "Dang, this is a lot of weed." So I just grabbed a big old nugget off the top, just stuck it in my pocket. And he would smoke with us anyways, but I figured, well, I'd have some weed for myself so I could smoke on my own time. And you know, that's how life was, you know. So I dropped out of 10th grade, and I just started hanging out with my uncle, you know. And I just figured, well, I don't need to go back to school or whatever, you know. I don't really care about school. And so this is when I was about coming up on 16 years old. So during the summer, so I only stayed up there with my uncle for about a month and a half. And he ended up bringing me back to Cheyenne. I ended up staying back in Cheyenne, but I didn't go back to school. I was just like, well, I'll just work with my grandpa or whatever I can do, but I don't want to go back to school. And you know, I kind of thought about going back to school, but I never went back to school. I dropped out in 10th grade. And so yeah, he brought me back after about a month and a half, and I just, you know, hanging out with my brother, and we'd smoke some weed and go work for whatever jobs my grandfather would have. He would have some brick and block work jobs here and there or whatever. Sometimes my Uncle Daniel would have, you know, if he wasn't working for a company, sometimes he'd have work and we'd help him out, do whatever. And my Uncle Daniel, he was a real good person too, but he kind of had an alcohol problem. But he wouldn't get drunk and get violent with nobody. He would just get drunk and have a good time, you know. But that was his only downfall, was the alcohol. You know, he'd get drunk, and you know, that's why he never went nowhere with a career or anything. And so my Uncle Daniel, he was around a lot, you know. From me growing up, he was around the house a lot also. You know, I always said it was my grandpa, but my Uncle Daniel was always there too. And my Uncle Daniel would sometimes have his own apartment, or he would stay at my mom's house and help her out around the house and help with whatever he could. So he taught me a lot of stuff too, you know, how to work on houses and work on cars and all kinds of different stuff. And so yeah, he was always around teaching us all kinds of stuff. Me and my brother, we were just like, my brother, all he cared about was smoking weed. And my brother, he didn't graduate either. He was in the 12th grade, and he was like a month or so away from graduating. And the teacher come up to him, talked to him, and she says, I don't know if you're going to make it, because I don't think you're going to have enough credits to graduate this year. She says you might have to be held back a year. And my brother didn't like hearing that at all. And it's funny though, because my mom put together a graduation party for my brother, because he was supposed to be graduating. Well, guess who didn't show up to their own graduation party? My brother. Because he found out from his teacher he wouldn't have enough credits or whatever, and I think he just waited till the last minute and didn't say nothing to my mom about it, and he was all upset about it. So he didn't even show up to his own graduation party. So everybody thought that he was graduating. We had a big old party for him. He never showed up. And you know, as time went on, they found out, you know, he had some issues with school and wasn't able to graduate that year. But he stopped going to school altogether. He didn't even graduate. He didn't get his GED or nothing. He just quit school also. So me and him, we would just hang out together, smoke weed, do work with my grandpa and my uncle and whatever, and just drifting through life, just doing whatever kind of deal. And it's crazy, you know.